You are listening to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 100, Your Best Game. Today is our 100th episode, and in honor we talk about your best game. We discuss what are our best games and some other memorable moments. We also ask you, the listener, to write in and let us know what is your best game. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribe and we'll ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me in person, we're back from a little bit of a vacation here. Jared just had a good one, I think.
I had a great one.
How you doing, Jared?
Not bad. How are you?
I'm doing great. If you've been listening to us all this time, guess what? This is our 100th episode. Almost 2 years of doing this.
Jeez, can you believe that?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, thank you to the listener base.
Yes.
It's because of you that we continue doing this. If we had gotten 0 listeners, we probably would have stopped a long time ago. But we've had great contributions from Gary and from Chris, and we've also had the write-in from the LARP up in Wisconsin.
Yep.
We've had a couple other small little blurbs here and there, and we've made great friends. I've been able to do some great games with the Dungeon Masters Dojo, with the D20 to Curtain guys, and Scott Legault, and all these other people that have been kind of part of this community. And thanks for the Dungeon Masters Dojo. You've kind of been able to open that up and kind of bring us into that fold as well.
Yeah, thank you very much to them.
And so we have exciting things coming up this year. I'm not sure if we can talk about them yet, but we'll let you know here in a coming episode. And I did promise the last time that we did a monumental episode that we would incorporate music into this, and you'd have an opening song and a closing song. I never did that. I'm sorry. I'm a year late. So we're gonna go ahead and actually make that a thing here in this coming year. I promise. Yeah. We'll make it one of these days. And we're hoping to get more contributions from our listeners, and be able to continue growing the podcast. Again, share the podcast with people because it helps us grow, helps us become a better community. We'll see where this community goes here in our 3rd year of podcasting. And we'll hopefully in 200 more episodes be able to tell you all about our great... 100 more episodes. 100 more episodes gets to 200. I can math.
There we go.
100 more episodes gets to 200, and I can tell you all about our great stuff. But no, it's... Any thoughts on your end there, Jared?
No, I just really want to thank the listeners for, tuning in each week. Thanks for all the constructive feedback. I've really enjoyed the conversations that we've had with some of our listeners, and I really appreciate it. Everyone who listens to us and puts up with us. Exactly.
And then for our listeners, sometime this year in the next couple episodes, if we have an off week or maybe in just a couple weeks from now, our listener Chris did a really nice thing for us. He recorded his thoughts on the Cortex Prime system and kind of talks about the what you can do and why he likes it so much and the successes with the system. It's a very kind of compact, straightforward episode. So what we'll do is we'll release it either alongside. This is just kind of some extra content, or if we're off a week, we'll release it an extra that week so we have something there. But we were not going to leave you in suspense for half a year until we have a day off. So we'll release it here sooner than later. But thank you, Chris, for doing that. So I just wanted to give a shout out. And if any of our other listeners, hey, I'd like to muse on something, do that. Good for them. Maybe you don't want to run your own podcast, but maybe you want to have a little bit of a voice here. So talk to us, send us a message, and we'd be happy to maybe let you record something as well. Anyways, today's episode, we are talking about your best games. And before we kind of go into it, the idea here is tell us about your best games. Maybe write into us, levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. Send us your email. Say, hey, these are my top 3 games that I've run or maybe played in, and this is why I think these are my top 3 games. Like, I really like this. This is a really memorable moment in it. This character was just a great character. I loved playing him, or I loved having the dichotomy between my players. I really nailed this scene. The story was really complete. Things like that. You know, just tell us what you think and why you think your best games are your best games. Again, you don't have to give me 3. You can give me 2. You can give me 1. Maybe 1 stands out above the rest of them. But go ahead and let us know. That just, you know, a little fun interactive piece here with the 100th episode. And in a couple episodes, then we'll concatenate all that data.
And put it in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, we'll put it in a spreadsheet, and then we'll share it with the listeners. And we'll have some fun, and we can talk and think about our best games.
All right.
So, anyways, Jared, I'm going to ask you, what have been your best games?
Number 1 best game, and I'm going to be open and honest, is actually one that was done recently. I've talked about it a lot on this podcast. It's one called Red Lake. So to those who haven't heard about that story, essentially, the characters or protagonists were our PIs, our normal human PIs, and they were called to investigate a homicide of a Caucasian woman on an Indian reservation. Now, the parents had asked for a PI because the police really didn't give a whole lot of investigation. And additionally, they had been told that it was an attack, you know, by one of the neighbors of a Wendigo. So they asked the PIs to go investigate. So they head up to the Red Lake Reservation, where they find out, you know, that this place is in financial straits. You know, most of the people are low income, you know, and that they think that there is an actual honest to God Wendigo that is currently hunting the community. So that sets the stage. Now, what it really was for me, what made it the best game that I've ever run, has to be the abundance of story that was there for them. So, you know, for example, there was a story behind, you know, the police department only having a chief of police. There were no other police because of this financial episode that they were going through. There was so much history from the actual reservation that I based it off of, that, you know, there was a riot in the 1970s, you know, or was it the 70s? I can't remember what time period it was, but, you know, there was a history there. I found some really cool photographs of people hiding behind essentially deer skull masks. And I built this air of suspicion from everyone. I built this really great environment of tension, of complete suspicion. So much, and really my players built it. I didn't even really have to build it. Like, I remember this one point that Aaron looked over and he goes, the lady who's been translating for us the entire time could have been lying the entire time. It was all based off of the fact that she was part of this Red Lake Heritage Society. And then suddenly complete distrust of her, of anyone really in the community, no matter how helpful they were, except for, you know, maybe the shaman and maybe the silversmith, because God knows they needed his help and they put his children through college. Because, you know, in Red Lake, I had so many stories going. You know, there was arms dealing happening on the reservation. There was a cult almost. It wasn't actually a cult. It was like a mafia almost that called themselves the Wendigo Society. I think it was the Wendigo Society. Or, and it involved people, going back, 2 generations who had been involved in this riot before. It involved old family feuds. Everyone's pointing fingers at everyone, and I've got my investigators going around trying to figure out the truth and coming into some very scary situations, where they're not even faced with the Wendigo yet, but they enter places where the Wendigo has been. And it's that air of fear. And then there was the human element to it. In Red Lake, I really created human beings. Some of these NPCs were some of the NPCs that I was most proud of. Because they were people who, just because there was so little of a population, everyone had something with everybody else. This person is cousin to this person, and this person's madly in love with this person, but hasn't told her, and this guy is a father figure to these two, and there was such a web of relationships, of human relationships, of not only, really, relationships of power, you know what I mean, or of employment, which is something that I think we as storytellers focus on a lot. This guy is the boss. This guy's the lieutenant of the boss, or this guy's the king. This guy is his, Shire Reeve, right? Sheriff, whatever, bailiff. I don't care. And that's all we think of. We go, okay, well, this guy works for this guy. This guy works for this guy. And we create elaborate webs of organizations, but we don't sometimes take the time to say, does he like his boss? Does he want the throne? I mean, sometimes I think we do often think about, like, the betrayal aspect, I want the throne. What happens with let's go with an example of I'm just going to use like a baron and his reeve, right? So the baron, what if the reeve actually doesn't really like the baron? What if the reeve himself is actually more aligned with the villagers and feels that good relationships is more important? It's and what relationships do they build? The reeve is going to build, because essentially, and I know there are some medieval historians out there that are just going to smack me down. They're going to be like, the reeve had this responsibility. But as far as I understand, the reeve was essentially a tax collector for the most part. They held the peace and collected taxes. As a tax collector, did he ever say, don't worry about it this month. I'm going to get you next month. But don't worry about it this month. You need to feed your family. And covered it up for the king. Dumped in 10 doubloons when he should have been dumping in 20, but wrote down 20 in the ledger. You know what I mean? And does that family recognize him for that? And how do we have the players interact with that reeve? And is he just this nameless guy who gets stabbed by our heroes because they assume, because the Baron is evil, this man is evil? And what happens when they go and investigate and dive deeper into relationships? And that's really what Red Lake was about relationships. There was a lot of love stories involved there. There was the one between the kid who everyone thought was, or originally thought was the Wendigo, and then the girl who everyone thought was the Wendigo because she was like daughter, essentially, or granddaughter to the Mafia Don. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, I really developed these really unique characters with flaws and loves and passions and so many other things, it was really, a very beautiful, sad picture, of what Native American reservations, unfortunately, all across the United States have to go through. And I promise I will not get on my little pedestal and start advocating and doing all that stuff. But I'm not going to get political, because everyone knows I have such a passion for Native American society here in the United States and across the world. In Canada, there's a large population. So for me, what I did was I built a setting that I didn't really, there was a rich history and a rich relationships between these people. There was one villain that my players, and Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, feared, but actually never met until they killed him.
Yeah, Luna, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had again, I think you're striking on the right points there, which was your atmosphere for the game, and you're right. This is the first game that in really any memory. I mean, you developed them in other games, but it was the first game that you really sort of fleshed it out before we kind of you sort of fleshed out the relationships before we had gotten there. We sort of made relationships in other games. Mm-hmm. In this game, there were pre-existing relationships, and we also got to make relationships.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting, because it was almost like if you play like a modern RPG or something, you go into the town, you talk to the townspeople. Like, the townspeople are all very intricately woven with one another. Like, you did a very good job of doing that. And again, you had that sort of small, again, the whole shtick with our investigations at that time period were small towns, interwoven in places where a PI could be the law. Okay, because in that situation, which one of the reasons why I think you chose the setting was that only the Bureau of Indian Affairs could go into there, and there was only one BIA agent.
Yeah, and he was killed like session 3.
Yeah, we didn't even see him get killed. We found him
dead.
We found him dead, and for a game that only spanned probably 10 sessions ish.
Yeah.
I mean, just a couple of months of gameplay. It was very complete. It was just it was very complete. It was almost like man, I wish there was more to it. At the end of it, but it was also like we completed everything there was to do.
Yeah. I mean, you got the arms dealing. You found the hidden money from lots of arms dealing. Put a man's kids through college.
And I mean, we did some crazy. You had such wonderful atmospheric scenes. I remember the scene when we went to the guy's cabin. We sort of stumbled upon the Wendigo Society. We found out they had this cabin in the woods. We went to his cabin, and it was the nest for the Wendigo.
Yep. Okay.
And again, it was so weird. So I mean, if you know anything about like Native American history and stuff, like and the Wendigo is a cannibal spirit. Mm-hmm. It feeds on like desperation, and comes in times of sadness, I believe.
Yes,
is kind of the myth behind it. But there's not a lot about like what it is. I mean, if you look at like a picture of it online, you'd probably find like something that looks like a werewolf. Okay,
kind of looks like a werewolf. But they typically, in a lot of illustrations I've seen, have the deer skull.
And so your big thing was that it has the deer horns, but also the way you kind of gave it life, you gave the monster a very unique life in that it nests. Like we came upon like almost like a massive bird's nest.
Yeah, that was my own interpretation.
And it was terrifying. It was scary. It was, I mean, like again, you had music that went along with it, and there are just so many interactions like with the different people that we came upon. You had this is back in the day when we were doing a lot of pictures with everybody.
Yep.
Okay,
I had pictures for every person.
Pictures for every person, and you had motivations for every person, and you had information about what they knew about the other people and how they felt about the other people in the town. And it was so well done in that regard.
It was that sense of community. It was really, I lay it down at the feet of two aspects. The history. There was so much for me as a storyteller. Now, granted, I majored in history. Some of the DC storylines I love the most. Like, my favorite Batman villain is the Court of Owls. And the Court of Owls essentially is a villain of history. They control the history of Gotham. And I have a thing about history. I love history. You know, it makes it old. And it's so the history was a huge part. And then it was just this interconnecting web of people. Really making solid people that my players interacted with. They enjoyed interacting. Everyone was different. You know, God damn, that game just came together as something else. You know, and it was I would say that honestly it was my number one game. It's the one that I'm most proud of. I look back on and I'm just like, hot damn, that was a good one. You know, like it took it was amazing to me because most of the time spent on it was literally spent making little details. Cause like I built the villain. I built how the first murder happened. The second murder happened. They arrived just before the second murder. I think it happened. The second murder technically happened the night they arrived. And from then on, it was not only investigating, it was trying to find out who hasn't been seen, who are the missing people, what is going on, because in the game, it was a dreadful winter. It was like a blizzard winter, you know, sub-zero temperatures and whiteouts that you couldn't see in front of your face. So most people were buried inside. You know, they weren't leaving the house. You wouldn't see them for work because there is no work, you know, in this environment, and they don't really leave the house because of the weather. So you didn't even know who was alive and who was dead. You know, and you, when you're like, I want to go interview this person, and you show up and they've been dead for days or maybe a couple of hours. Like, holy shit, we're right behind this thing. Is it still here? You know? Oh my God, the body's still warm. How terrifying. Like, the monster could still be here and we don't know if it is. I think that was a big thing, was the unknown. But no, it was a game that I was proud to run. It was a game that I was proud to see at the end. I was insanely proud of it. Still am. Still this very day, insanely proud. And it comes down to the history and the relationships. But what was now that I've given my little, your favorite game?
My favorite game, my best game are different things. My best game, because I've got several favorite games, but my best game that I have personally run has to be the game that I just finished.
That was fantastic.
Which was Rewind.
Rewind was fantastic.
Okay, it was kind of the boot off to my next sort of kind of episodic chronicle that we're doing here. And what I ended up doing is Jared has produced a bunch of different NPCs. One of them being this man, a mage, George Yasin, and in our world. And I've sort of been waiting to see if you were going to do something with him. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take him further than before. I'm not gonna destroy the character, but I'm gonna use him, and I'm gonna create sort of his organization and what's kind of going on. So he was the client in their supernatural investigation. Now keep in mind, Jared's talking about like our first iteration of it, which was very human stuff. Yes. And now we're in their third iteration, which is you guys are neck deep in supernatural shit.
Yes, we are.
And so it's a very, very different game in that regard. And so a mage is now asking for the help of our special investigation force to help him prevent
Sorry, it sounds like an 80s action. Special Investigation Force. Sorry.
I'll play some great 80s music to go along with it. But no, so he enlists them, and the contract that they have is very simple, which is, I know I'm going to die in 3 days. And
wasn't it 5?
3.
Was it 3?
3.
Jesus.
I know I'm going to die in 3 days. They're in, where in New York is that, on Long Island?
Long Island.
Yeah, he was on Long Island. In the Hamptons? That's what I'm looking for. He's there on Long Island, and he's a very powerful mage. He's got time magic, stuff like that. But he says he's going to die in 3 days. Everything he's done to prevent his death results in it. Okay, and I started the story off with him dying. Okay, and then him kind of seeing that death and then calling them in. And you guys came in, and again, there's a time limit and a time crunch. You actually had 3.5 days because you came in that night.
Yeah.
But what you guys ended up doing is you looked at the recent events that kind of surrounded him and his group. You went to go investigate what happened where one of his men went haywire, was lost. So there was another NPC that Jared created called Moores, and Moores was the man who was literally on fire. Okay, he was always on fire, and he burnt down a building in the suburbs, and it was an apartment building, and that sort of picked it off. And I had the villain actually show up in that first scene without you seeing the villain, but I had it being where it was sort of this piercing hunting feeling that you guys had, and the whole point of it was, and I didn't realize how the game was going to sort of play out at the time, but the thing that really made it interesting and fun for me was that because you're running around New York, and New York is horrendous traffic, you're driving around it, it became a logistical problem in and of itself, and there was always this tension of we're running out of time, and we have too many open doors to go through. So, the players had to make some really serious choices about where they went, and I had a very intense timeline in terms of, if they weren't with this person at the right time, that person would die, and things like that. I had a bunch of this stuff planned out in the game, and I had a bunch of interwoven stuff, within groups of people, but I think what made it so successful is that the 3 or 4 distinct storylines I had, you guys were able to connect the dots on all those storylines, and they were all interwoven to one another. And I think at the end of it, when you got through it, you kind of got to experience. Part of it that was very successful is opening up the world that we are creating, which was part of my goal. And I also tied it into a previous game that Jared had done, one that he would probably consider to be a flagship type game.
It was a flagship game.
Which was the Shattered Sphere series. And I think that my point was to make callbacks to it without completely cannibalizing that story. And
great job on that.
And what it always felt like every time I went through it, I was always nervous through this. I had to get a lot of player feedback at the end of it. Was I took you through very fantastical journeys in this game, and you guys soaked it up.
Yes, we did.
You loved it. I took you through time and space, and I took you to different worlds, and I took you through again, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Universe Edition here. Okay, this was it was wild, and at the end of the game, you guys came together and you put it all together. You came and formed a plan, and you stopped and averted, the death of this character. And I had some stuff planned for it that could bring it back, and I probably, I didn't feel like I needed to force the moniker of Rewind to be what it was. There's a little, it was one of the features of it was if they couldn't figure it out by the time he died, the game rewound back to the beginning of the 3 days. But I didn't end up ever having to do that. The players, hit the right points, got the right information, were able to get through it. And again, you guys, the enjoyment, the kind of the fear, the awe, I think that those were all things that really hit well for me. And they helped expand my storytelling. I think it was the more I've been telling more complete games as we've been doing this, but that has been my most complete game as a whole. So that's really why it's my best game.
Well, dude, that game was out of this world fantastic. I mean, it really was. I mean, I had such a great fucking time. The callbacks, subtle yet respectful yet there. You know what I mean? There's
a lot of dramatic irony in that too, because how dangerous some of the NPCs I introduced are as a player.
As a player,
characters don't.
So one of the best parts are and this took a lot not to metagame, because in Shattered Sphere they had met this one NPC named Marvel Della Hunt, who was a spirit, very old spirit, who was nuts, completely off the wall, zany, crazy. Not funny, zany, crazy, scary, zany, crazy. Think more Joker, but he had very specific rules about things. Like if you ran from him, it was a problem, because if you ran, he would have to consider you prey. And then you can't be friends, because prey can't be friends. He had nuts rules. He had the ability to crack a planet in half. I mean, literally had the power to blow a planet in half. But in this game, our characters had never interacted with this individual, so we had no clue. Like, we got to play it out like my character kept pulling her gun on him. like that's going to do anything.
It was a very funny scene, because one of Brian's character flaws or merits, depending on how you look at it, is he's trusting.
That is not a merit. It is so a flaw.
He's very trusting. So anything that somebody says to him, he's like, yeah, it'll work out. He's not very skeptical of anything anyone says to him. So he is sort of the calm. In a way, it was a merit in that case, because you pulled out your gun. He's like, no, it's okay. It's okay.
We're friends.
We're friends. And then you put it away. You're like, sorry, I don't know why I keep doing that. And but he's not human, is the thing. He's a spirit in the game, and so he doesn't have any. He doesn't have any concept of that Jared is trying to be threatening to him.
It's for him. It's for Marvel, and that's one of my favorite things. He's always trying to imitate humanity. And he doesn't quite get it right.
Yes, he has a mansion on. I mean, in the Shattered Sphere game, he had a mansion on one of the moons of this planet, and maybe I don't even know if that was actually there, but I went with it, because you can do sort of White Wolf, the spirit realms, or maybe you're a different dimension or whatever. But you were on the moon on a planet at his mansion, like a very elaborate mansion. He had a butler.
Learn what this roast beef is and deliver it to me.
And the mansion is decorated in a very human fashion. It was he's supposed to be trying to become human, but he has no idea how to do it. He's just he's missing a lot of context.
Tons of context.
tons of context. But I loved the dramatic irony in the game. For the callbacks, I love that you two played your characters so well and not knowing what all this stuff was. So, when you went to the spirit world to go find out where the contracts are, you guys both signed up for boons, not knowing what you were delivering or giving.
Yeah.
Okay,
that was bad.
And I think that is so. Just again, I got such phenomenal
Brian
play.
Plays character like a T there. It's just a contract. Don't worry about it.
I got such phenomenal play out of both of my characters for it, and both my players really played it well. And again, that helped it along. And one of the things I didn't do in the game, which I had done in previous games, is I went very maps light.
Yes, you did, and I liked it.
I went very asset light. I had a ton of notes. I had like 40, 50 pages of notes. Okay?
So I finished Eternal Dharma over Christmas break. That is so asset heavy. Oh my God. Yeah, it's got a ton of assets.
Yeah, no, it was a good tee up game, and I think it's going to be able to springboard us into the future, or really set up my other games. And it's something now that I have to play up to. Like, that has been, without a doubt, I think that's my best. I've run other decent games. Like, I've run like my vampire game where you're all Bruja. That was a pretty decent game.
That was a decent game.
I've run, ages and ages ago, I think Night of the Nebuchadnezzar was a pretty decent game.
God, fantastic.
Okay. But
that game gave me fucking nightmares.
But I mean, we were like, I feel like 10 or 11 years old. I mean, like, we were young.
We were young.
But again, it worked for the genre and the type of thing that we're doing there. And it was actually the first game that I completed.
Dude, so scary.
And then,
to give you a little context, we were stuck in a hospital with a chainsaw wielding horror thing that just, you could dump buckets of brass and it didn't die. And then you walk anywhere and then people are springing up and, like the patients are turning into scalpel wielding lunatics, and we couldn't get out of the hospital. It was terrifying. It was just terrifying. Couldn't trust anyone. You couldn't trust the other people. Couldn't trust the other players. Because back then we were always backstabbing each other.
Yeah,
we were terrible.
Yeah, we were terrible players. But I mean, like, again, the vampire game was, I was starting to kind of learn how to do it better, and I had some other good investigation ones. I think I hit the opening well with, like, my Pigman.
The Pigman game was fantastic. See, I think you really downplay a lot of the really good games that you've put out there. The Snake one was great. I really enjoyed that one. Even your first one was fantastic. I think you downplay it.
I thought the first one was a little haphazard. It worked out.
It was good.
I really liked the end of the first series of the investigations when you guys were in the resort in the mountains.
Yes, that was good. That was very good.
I liked it because the end of it had some callbacks to the entire game as a whole.
The ending was fantastic.
And that's one of the things that I've learned how to do better is be able to get my endings to kind of come together better. But I think, again, this last game definitely was my best one. I've been wanting to run something that was longer, that had more substance to it. Most of my other things have been like 2-3 nights. This went on for several nights. We got close to 9-10 sessions out.
I think we had 9 sessions, and it was freaking fantastic. All right. Well, what was your? Because you said that was your best game. What's your favorite game? Because you said you had different ones.
The favorite game, my favorite game is the one that I played in. I mean, like, it's different. Like, okay. I think like I said, I've got lots of favorites, but I to just give them to you in no particular order. Elders, Shattered Sphere, Red Lake. Again, those are all games I played in. Mm-hmm. And again, you were the de facto GM, so you have a lot more wealth to choose from here. But you've done 3 phenomenal games. I call them.
See, the thing is, you keep putting Shattered Sphere there, and I don't see it. It's a flagship game. It was definitely a good game, but it's not even on the same shelf as Elders and Red Lake.
Maybe I'm biased towards the beginning of Shattered Sphere. The way that you did it was very. The
first game was pretty good because it was a 3-game series.
Yeah, it was so intriguing the way that you did the first game.
I'd say the first game was good. The second one was lackluster, and the third was just shit.
The problem with the second one is the second one you tried to get too formulaic.
I did.
With how we were kind of the thing that made Shattered Sphere, in case you're wondering, really intriguing to me and was really fun to play in was this kind of, we were kind of sort of stuck in like this fragmented time hoppy sort of thing.
Yep.
Okay. And so we could end up, where Jared sort of always had a way to get us out of a bad situation by being able to shift the scene. Okay. And it fit with the genre and the theme that he established from the very first night. And what was great about it was, I don't think you ever, again, it was a get out of jail free card, but you never really obligatorily like just abused it flagrantly. Like we weren't like, Jared, it's time to hop, and like, you're okay, guys, we got you. Like, no, it was always, I don't know, like if we're going to hop or if Jared's going to frag us this time, because like we were in that building. And, like, the Technocracy came with, like, their battleship, and, like, they were, like, shooting down the building. It was collapsing. I was like, we're going to die here. I'm like, Jared has not hopped us yet. We're going to die.
Whoa, shit.
I'm like, we have to find a different way out of this. I'm looking at all of my powers. I'm trying to figure something out. Like, can I portal us out of here? Can I get... And then eventually we hop. Like, but it was just so clever. Again, it was probably that same feeling that maybe... Again, I don't know how you felt exactly when I ran my last game here, but there was always this feeling of fantastical stuff. Okay, like there are very defined moments that I always find where like I'm totally immersed in the game, and you had a lot of those moments in Shattered Sphere. Like when I first met Marvell, like I was totally immersed. Okay, if we go back to the Wraith game, and I know the Wraith game had problems,
lots of problems.
Okay, but when I was on
want to talk about player favoritism? There it is.
But when I was on Blackwell's Island, okay,
so good.
I was so immersed. That whole scene, I was terrified. I felt trapped.
My favorite is Blackwell's Island in this Wraith game. If you actually look it up, Blackwell's Island does have a real history of an insane asylum where people were used for experimentation and were abused, and like there was a prison there as well where the prisoners were taking care of the mentally ill. I mean, like it was an awful place, and it's a real place. Blackwell's Island is now called Welfare Island, and it's right off the coast of Manhattan, and it's actually populated today. I think it has a new name. Roosevelt Island is the new name for it. Now it's Roosevelt Island. And so Aaron learns like the catch line about Blackwell's Island. Everyone says no one leaves Blackwell's alive, right? And Aaron gets out of this horrific situation, gets on the boat, and the boatman takes him back to the docks in New York. And the boatman looks at him and goes, "Remember, no one leaves Blackwell's alive." And Aaron's like, "Am I really dead? Did I actually get off?"
We're in a Wraith game, so I'm already a ghost, and like I'm investigating things. And I took a prisoner there to be stored in Blackwell, because that's sort of what you do. You break them down, and they become stored.
They become money.
Yeah, they become the Wraith currency. Well, the entire scene, like I'm not lying to you. Like Jared walked me into it. It was all fine. It was kind of creepy. We got there. The warden does this. He hands me the pathos. Is that what the currency is? He hands me the pathos from the prisoner. And then like I walk out of the room, like I know how to get back out of here. I walk out of the room. The warden doesn't walk me out of the room. And then Jared sticks me into a black jail. Everything's turned upside down. Nothing makes sense anymore. And I'm stuck. I've got nothing. I've got maybe a 6-shooter to my name. Okay,
you did have a 6-shooter. That was about it.
All right, and the entire scene, everything about it was terrifying. It was so scary, and it was just like, I can't get out of this. Like,
you got to knock your player off their base. That's how you make shit scary. Knock them off their base.
And again, it was just one of those situations where I was totally immersed in something you had done in a game. That, like, again, I've had those moments in several of your games. There's a lot of them that stick out. Like, again, like I said, the scene with Marvell, the scene where we were talking to Peter Bolton in his office.
when
we realized that he was the bad guy. And I was like, we know he's the bad guy, and he knows we know.
Are we about to die?
Are we going to die here? Like, there's so many of those those great scenes.
So that's where I'm good. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that again, we just shared one of each of our games there, and just some other good memories and moments. But like I said, go ahead and write into us, levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. Let us know your best games. You can give us, shorter blurbs, bigger blurbs, whatever they are. We'll share them with you at another game, and because we'll be sharing your written thought, it should go probably a little bit faster than like 20 minutes per game. So, but we would love to hear them. I think that'd be a great thing to do just here on our 100th episode. And thank you for sticking around our 100th episode. If you're looking for other great content, go back to the other 100 episodes. They're all great.
Happy 100th, everyone.
Anyways, review, subscribe, podcast, share with a friend, and keep listening. So anyways, for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week, everyone.